In 1965, Dr. Zhivago captured our hearts with its sweeping love story of war, poetry, and impossible choices. But behind that beauty lies a chilling reality. Many of its cast later faced deeply tragic endings. From sudden deaths to devastating illness, their real stories took turns no one expected. Stay with me, because this is a side of Hollywood you rarely get to see. Omar Sharif as Yuri Zhivago. We'll begin with Omar Sharif, who portrayed Yuri Zhivago, the idealistic doctor and poet caught between love and revolution when he was 33 years old. Born on April 10, 1932 in Alexandria, Egypt, he brought a quiet restraint and emotional depth that allowed the character to guide the entire story with subtlety rather than force. This performance propelled him to global stardom and secured his place among the most iconic leading men of his era. Omar Sharif passed away on July 10, 2015, at the age of 83, after suffering a heart attack in a Cairo hospital. In his final months, he was battling Alzheimer's disease, a devastating condition that slowly erased even the memory of the films that had made him a legend. He was laid to rest at the historic Sayyida Nafisa Cemetery in Cairo, his coffin draped in the Egyptian flag as the world said goodbye to a man who had once conquered international cinema. But behind that composed and poetic presence was a life shaped by painful trade-offs. To marry Faten Hamama, the woman he loved, he changed his religion and identity, only to lose that same marriage as his career pulled him further away from home. Their relationship ended in 1974, and from that moment on, he never remarried, later admitting that fame had given him everything, except a place to belong. He moved from one luxury hotel to another across Europe, living a life that looked glamorous on the outside but felt increasingly empty within. And over time, that emptiness turned into something far more destructive. His addiction to gambling drained millions from his fortune, with nights where entire sums vanished in a single sitting, leaving him with a net worth of just around $500,000. Alongside the loss of his family life and the cruel progression of Alzheimer's, his final years stood in stark contrast to the triumphs of Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, and Funny Girl, 1968. What remains is not just the image of a legendary star, but the story of a man whose greatest victories on screen could never fully silence the quiet battles within. Rod Steiger, as Victor Komarovsky. Next comes Rod Steiger, who played Victor Komarovsky, a manipulative and opportunistic lawyer navigating power and survival during political chaos when he was 40 years old. Born on April 14, 1925 in West Hampton, New York, he delivered a performance filled with intensity and moral ambiguity that added tension and a darker psychological layer to the story. This role further established him as one of Hollywood's most powerful method actors. Rod Steiger passed away on July 9, 2002, at the age of 77, due to pneumonia and kidney failure following complications from gallbladder surgery in Los Angeles. He was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, closing a career that spanned over 100 film and television roles across 5 decades. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $2 million. But long before that, his life had already been marked by trauma. He grew up never knowing his father and was raised by a mother struggling with alcoholism, leading him to leave home at just 16 years old to join the Navy during World War II. Those early experiences left deep emotional scars, which later fueled both his performances and his personal struggles. And as his career reached its peak, his inner battles became impossible to ignore. He suffered from severe depression for over 8 years during the 1970s, at one point isolating himself completely and believing his career was finished. Combined with 5 failed marriages and ongoing health issues, his life became a cycle of success followed by collapse. Even so, he delivered unforgettable performances in The Pawnbroker, 1964, and Waterloo, 1970. His legacy ultimately stands as a powerful reminder that the same intensity that drives greatness can also carry a heavy personal cost. Alec Guinness as Yevgraf ZHIVAGO. Shifting into view is Alec Guinness, who played Yevgraf ZHIVAGO, the watchful half-brother guiding the story through memory and political aftermath when he was 51 years old. Born on April 2, 1914, in Maida Vale, London, he brought a measured authority and reflective gravity that gave the film its narrative structure and a deeper sense of historical weight. This role confirmed his stature as one of Britain's greatest actors. Alec Guinness passed away on August 5, 2000, at the age of 86 at King Edward VII Hospital in Midhurst, West Sussex. He had been diagnosed with prostate cancer in February 2000 and with liver cancer just 2 days before his death, after a long and private struggle with illness. He was buried at Petersfield Cemetery in Hampshire after a funeral at St. Lawrence Catholic Church, closing the life of a man whose net worth was estimated at around $10 million. But behind that extraordinary career was a deeply private man, shaped by pain from the very beginning. He was born outside marriage and never truly knew the identity of his biological father, a wound that stayed with him for life and contributed to the reserve and melancholy many people sensed in him, even after becoming one of the most honored actors of the 20th century, with an Oscar for The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957, and global recognition from Star Wars, 1977, he remained emotionally guarded and far more complicated than the dignified image he projected on screen. His personal life carried its own quiet tensions as well. Though he remained married to Marula Salomon from 1938 until his death in 2000, rumors and later biographies suggested an inner life he kept hidden from the public, adding another layer to his lifelong emotional restraint. Illness gradually closed in during his final year, and his death came only 2 days after the official liver cancer diagnosis, with his wife also dying of liver cancer just 2 months later. Seen as a whole, his life feels less like the story of a man simply admired for greatness, and more like that of someone who carried silence, discipline, and sorrow with equal force. Ralph Richardson as Alexander Gromyko. Here we have Ralph Richardson, who played Alexander Gromyko, a gentle intellectual and family patriarch in Dr. Zhivago when he was 63 years old. Born on December 19, 1902, in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire, England, he naturally made the Gromyko household feel like one of its few true places of shelter. This role added another distinguished chapter to the career of a man already regarded as one of the great giants of the British stage. Ralph Richardson passed away on October 10, 1983, at the age of 80 after a series of strokes. His death came only a short time before the release of his final film, Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, 1984, which later earned him a posthumous Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $1.5 million, closing the life of an actor whose reputation had long been measured more by reverence than by wealth. But behind that celebrated career was a long, private sorrow that never truly left him. His first wife, Muriel Hewitt, suffered for years from encephalitis lethargica and a devastating decline in mental health before her death in 1942, leaving him with a grief that lingered far beyond the public image of the eccentric, poetic actor audiences admired. Even as he continued building a career across more than 60 films and decades on stage, that personal loss became part of the emotional reserve and sadness many people sensed in him. His later life remained marked by that same contrast between brilliance and mystery. He was admired for performances in works such as The Heiress, 1949, and Richard III, yet colleagues often described him as elusive, deeply private, and impossible to fully know. That sense of distance only added to the unusual power of his performances, making his work feel touched by something both graceful and slightly haunted. Looking back at the full shape of his life, what remains strongest is the image of a man who turned private pain into a kind of quiet theatrical magic few others could ever match. Siobhan McKenna as Anna Gromyko. Next, we have Siobhan McKenna, who played Anna Gromeko, a compassionate, motherly figure in Dr. Zhivago when she was 43 years old. Born on May 24, 1922, in Belfast, Northern Ireland, she gave the family scenes greater depth and made the world around the central characters feel more human and lived in. This role added film visibility to a career already shaped by enormous prestige on the stage. Siobhan McKenna passed away on November 16, 1986, at the age of 64 in Dublin, Ireland, following lung cancer surgery. Her body was buried at Rahoon Cemetery in County Galway, where her grave inscription was written in Irish, reflecting the language and culture that remained central to her identity throughout her life. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at around $1 million, but the tragedy in her life had been building for years. A heavy smoker for much of her adult life, she carried the habit until it led to the cruel illness that would eventually destroy her health. Even as she remained admired for her extraordinary stage presence and continued working into the 1980s, the physical damage had already begun closing in, turning what had once been strength and command into a long, private struggle. Her personal life also carried a quieter sadness. She was married to actor Dennis O'Day until his death in 1978, and the loss of her husband came less than a decade before her own final illness. Even so, she continued to be remembered not only for screen work like King of Kings, 1961, and Of Human Bondage, 1964, but for the rare force she brought to the theater. Taken together, her story feels less like that of a conventional film star and more like that of a fiercely gifted woman. Klaus Kinski as Kostoya Damorsky. Stepping into the frame is Klaus Kinski, who played Kostoya Damorsky, a ruthless secret police agent enforcing political control in Dr. Zhivago when he was 39 years old. Born on October 18, 1926, in Sopot, Free City of Danzig, now Sopot, Poland, he naturally brought a sharp intensity and unpredictable energy that added tension and unease to the film's political atmosphere. This role contributed to the image that would later define his career as one of cinema's most extreme and unforgettable performers. Klaus Kinski passed away on November 23, 1991, at the age of 65 after a sudden heart attack in Lagunitas, California. His ashes were later scattered into the Pacific Ocean in February 1992, marking the end of a life as turbulent as the characters he portrayed. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $2 million. But behind that electrifying screen presence was a deeply troubled and controversial life. Known for his explosive temper, he frequently clashed with directors and co-stars, most famously during his collaborations with Werner Herzog over a span of 15 years. Their working relationship was marked by extreme conflicts, including physical altercations and even death threats, revealing just how volatile his personality could become under pressure. And the darkness extended far beyond the set. After his death, his daughter Pola Kinski publicly accused him of years of sexual abuse, adding a deeply disturbing layer to his legacy. Combined with a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder and a lifetime of erratic, often violent behavior, his story remains one of the most unsettling in film history. Looking back, his life stands as a stark reminder that extraordinary talent and inner chaos can sometimes exist side by side in ways that leave a lasting and complicated shadow. Bernard Kay as Kuril, Bolshevik. Appearing next is Bernard Kay, who played Kuril, a Bolshevik officer and political enforcer representing the rigid authority of the revolution in Dr. Zhivago when he was 37 years old. Born on February 23, 1928 in Bolton, England, he naturally brought a grounded seriousness and quiet authority that reinforced the political tension running through the story. This role reflected his strength as a dependable supporting actor and contributed to a long, steady career across stage, television, and film. Bernard Kay passed away on December 25, 2014, at the age of 86 in London, England. He left behind a vast body of work spanning decades, with hundreds of television appearances and stage performances. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $500,000, reflecting a lifetime dedicated more to craft than to fame. But his journey was far from easy. Despite his talent and consistency, he rarely received leading roles, spending most of his career in supporting parts that often went under-recognized by the wider public. After the death of his wife, actress Patricia Haynes, from cancer in 1977, he never remarried and was said to have lived with that loss for the rest of his life. In his later years, he lived quietly and passed away alone at home on Christmas Day. Seen in full, his story is not one of dramatic rise or fall, but of quiet dedication, resilience, and a career built on consistency rather than spotlight. Adrienne Corri as Amelia. Here comes Adrienne Corri, who played Amelia, Laura's mother, a protective yet emotionally strained parent in Dr. ZHIVAGO when she was 34 years old. Born on November 13, 1931 in Glasgow, Scotland, she naturally infused the role with a sharp emotional edge and quiet tension, helping to deepen the family dynamics and the fragile domestic world surrounding Laura. This role reinforced her reputation as a fearless performer willing to take on emotionally intense and unconventional parts. Adrienne Corri passed away on March 13, 2016, at the age of 84 due to coronary artery disease at her home in London. In her later years, she stepped away from acting and devoted much of her time to researching art history, even publishing scholarly work, marking a quiet but intellectual final chapter to her life. At the time of her passing, her net worth was estimated at around $1 million. But behind that strong on-screen presence was a personality that often sparked conflict. Known for her bold and unfiltered nature, she frequently clashed with directors and colleagues, refusing to conform to expectations in an industry that often demanded obedience. Even during productions, her defiance could create tension. Yet it was that same intensity that made her performances unforgettable, especially in controversial works like A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Where she endured physically demanding scenes that few others would accept. Her personal life carried that same restless energy. A turbulent marriage with actor Daniel Massey ended in divorce after 6 years, shaped by incompatible visions of life and career. Rather than settling into stability, she chose independence, even if it meant isolation later on. As the years passed, she gradually withdrew from the spotlight, trading fame for solitude and intellectual pursuit. Looking back, her life feels like a quiet rebellion against both Hollywood and convention. A woman who never softened, even when the world expected her to. Julie Christie, as Laura Antipova. Taking the spotlight next is Julie Christie, who portrayed Laura Antipova, the passionate and conflicted woman at the center of a love shaped by war and impossible choices when she was just 25 years old. Born on April 14, 1940, in Assam, British India, she brought a rare emotional honesty and quiet intensity that made the character feel deeply human and anchored the story in something intimate and real. This role solidified her as the defining face of a generation and secured her place among the most celebrated actresses of her time. As of 2026, Julie Christie is 86 years old, living a quiet life far removed from the spotlight that once defined her. After winning an Academy Award for Darling, 1965, and building a career filled with critically acclaimed performances, she chose a different path. Today, she resides in Wales, focusing on environmental activism and humanitarian work, with an estimated net worth of around $10 million. But what makes her story so unusual is how she turned away from the very fame others chased their entire lives. At the height of her success, Christie felt increasingly uncomfortable with the pressure of media attention and public expectations. That discomfort slowly pushed her into emotional withdrawal, even periods of mild depression, leading her to step back from Hollywood at a time when her career could have grown even bigger. Her personal life reflected that same tension between visibility and escape. A turbulent 7-year relationship with Warren Beatty unfolded under constant public scrutiny before she ultimately chose stability over chaos, later marrying journalist Duncan Campbell after decades together. Despite unforgettable roles in Fahrenheit 451, 1966, and Don't Look Now, 1973, she gradually disappeared from mainstream cinema by choice. Looking back, her journey stands as a rare example of someone who chose peace over permanence in the spotlight, leaving behind a legacy shaped as much by absence as by presence. Geraldine Chaplin as Tanya Gromeko. Here we see Geraldine Chaplin, who played Tanya Gromeko, a devoted wife holding on to stability during the Russian Revolution when she was just 21 years old. Born on July 31, 1944, in Santa Monica, California, she brought a gentle sincerity and emotional balance that grounded the story and softened its sweeping intensity. This performance earned her a Golden Globe nomination and launched her international career, opening the door to over 140 film and television roles across 5 languages. As of 2026, Geraldine Chaplin is 81 years old, still maintaining a respected presence in global cinema after nearly 6 decades of work. She built a diverse career spanning Spanish, French, and English language films, earning recognition in projects like Nashville, 1975, and The Orphanage, 2007, while receiving Spain's prestigious Goya Award in 2002. With a net worth estimated at around $20 million, she continues to appear in select roles while dividing her time between Spain and Switzerland. But behind that long career was a childhood shaped by instability few could imagine. At just 8 years old, her life changed when her father, Charlie Chaplin, was effectively banned from returning to the United States, forcing the family to relocate to Switzerland. That constant displacement, combined with growing up under one of cinema's most iconic names, created a pressure that followed her for decades, pushing her to constantly prove she was more than just Chaplin's daughter. Her adult life carried its own complexities. Her 12-year relationship with director Carlos Saura brought both creative success and emotional strain, ending in 1979 before she later found stability in marriage with Patricio Castilla. One of the most shocking moments came in 1978, when her father's body was stolen in a ransom plot, forcing her to negotiate directly with criminals while protecting her newborn son. Despite everything, she continued building a powerful career with films like Talk to Her, 2002, and The Impossible, 2012. Through all of it, her journey reflects not just inheritance, but the strength to shape a life and identity entirely her own. Tom Courtenay as Pasha Antipov. Moving forward, Tom Courtenay played Pasha Antipov, the idealistic revolutionary whose transformation into Strelnikov gave the story one of its darkest and most tragic turns when he was just 28 years old. Born on February 25, 1937, in Hull, East Yorkshire, England, he brought nervous intensity and emotional conviction that made the character's journey from hope to hardness feel both believable and deeply unsettling. This role earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor and helped confirm him as one of the defining faces of the British New Wave. As of 2026, Tom Courtenay is 89 years old and still active after more than 6 decades in film, television, and theater. Knighted in 2001 for his services to cinema and theater, he has continued to build an acclaimed later career with works such as 45 Years, 2015, which earned him a Silver Bear, and Queen at Sea, 2026, which brought him another Silver Bear for Best Supporting Performance. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, he continues to divide his life between Manchester and London while remaining a respected presence on stage and screen. But the path behind that success was never as easy as it seemed. Early fame brought a level of pressure he never fully enjoyed, especially as he moved from theater into film and found himself pushed into public attention during the 1960s. Although widely praised for performances in The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner, 1962, and Billy Liar, 1963, he often resisted the very machinery of stardom, turning down major opportunities because he did not want to live under the constant strain of publicity and expectation. His personal life also reflected that search for balance. His first marriage to actress Cheryl Kennedy ended in divorce in 1982, a painful break that came after 9 years together before he later found greater stability with Isabel Crossley, whom he married in 1988. That emotional caution, combined with his discomfort around fame, shaped the unusual arc of his career. A gifted actor who repeatedly stepped back just when the spotlight grew brightest. Looking across the full span of his life, what stands out most is not only the talent that made him famous, but the quiet determination to protect himself from everything fame tried to take away. Jack MacGowran as Petya. Finally, we have Jack MacGowran, who played Petya, a loyal servant within the Gromeko household, quietly observing the shifting world around him in Dr. Zhivago when he was 47 years old. Born on October 13, 1918, in Dublin, Ireland, he enriched the domestic layers of the story and made even a small role feel deeply authentic. This role added to his reputation as a character actor capable of leaving a lasting impression without needing the spotlight. Jack MacGowran passed away on January 30th, 1973, at the age of 54 in New York City due to complications from influenza during the devastating London flu epidemic. His sudden death came at a shocking moment, just as he was gaining renewed attention from his role in The Exorcist, 1973, which was released shortly after his passing. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $300,000. But what makes his story truly heartbreaking is how close he was to a major turning point. After years of building a respected career on stage, particularly through his celebrated interpretations of Samuel Beckett's works, he was finally reaching a broader international audience. His performance as Burke Dennings in The Exorcist was already generating strong attention, suggesting a late-career breakthrough that could have redefined his legacy. Instead, everything was cut short in a matter of days. Falling ill during what seemed like a routine flu outbreak, his condition rapidly worsened into fatal complications, leaving the film world stunned. Seen in full, his life feels like a story interrupted at its peak. Looking back at the Dr. Zhivago, 1965, cast then and now 2026, it's hard to ignore how many of these lives were touched by tragedy, loss, and unexpected endings behind the beauty of such a timeless film. So what do you think? Which story shocked you the most, and did any of these endings surprise you? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and follow for more incredible then and now stories like this.